Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, Republic of Vietnam, and St. Albans Naval Hospital, Queens, New York.
And were you drafted or did you enlist?
I enlisted. The Navy did not draft.
And where were you living at the time when you enlisted?
Living in the town I grew up in and graduated from high school in Seymour, Connecticut.
And why did you decide to join the Navy?
I was working at the time, not attending college. I knew that probably, in all probability, had I not enlisted, I would have been drafted at that time. And I was going out with a young lady. I was dating a young lady, and she broke off the relationship. And I had one of my best buddies was enlisting in the Navy. His father had been in the Navy, and he said, "Why don't you enlist with me?" And I said, "Well, what the heck?" And that's what I did.
Do you recall your first days in service?
Well, going to boot camp is probably a memory that anyone who's been through that experience recalls that, certainly. It's a new experience going from the civilian world to being an enlisted person in the Navy, in the military.
Do you remember anything about your boot camp or training?
I remember, of course, there are many things I remember about it. One of the most interesting ones, I think, for the purpose of this discussion, is that we would attend classes for weeks about what training and career opportunities there were in the Navy. This was part of boot camp every day. Some part of the day you would attend the classes. And I attended these classes, and then at the end of some period of time, you were to have an interview and request what kind of specialty that you might want to go into. And probably the first 3 or 4 items that I had chosen, I was unqualified for because of my eyesight. I wanted to do something in aviation, something in submarines. There was one that sounded really exciting to me, and that was aviation photography, like high-level photography. And all of those seemed like really great things. And as I mentioned each of these, the interviewer said, "No, can't do that. No, your eyesight can't do that." At the bottom of my list was one that I thought would be a really nice, neat, clean job, and it was to be a dental technician or dentist assistant. I forget the exact title of the position. And so he wrote that down. There's no problem with eyesight with that, but he only had one preference for me, and he was supposed to get several choices that I might have for an area of specialty. So he said to me, "Well, you have dental technician here. Hospital corpsman is related, it's medical." He says, "Why don't we just put that one down?" I said, "Okay, let's put that one down." And we got out of the interview session, and I was talking to my buddy, the guy I had enlisted with, and he said, "How'd it go?" And I told him that I had put what happened, and that they put down hospital corpsman. And he looked at me and started screaming. I'll leave out the expletives. He said, "You fool, you're going to Vietnam." And within 2 years, I was in Vietnam. My buddy was right. He's still a good friend of mine.
Do you remember any of your drill instructors?
Oh yeah, we had our company commander, it was called in the Navy, was, I believe, a first-class petty officer, and he was from the South. I believe he was from Kentucky, and he had no love for, or at least he professed to have no affection for, damn Yankees, and every single person in his company was from New York or Connecticut. And so I will never forget that company commander. he made our lives kind of difficult. I suspect he didn't dislike Yankees as much as he pretended to. He seemed like a pretty nice guy the last day when he was saying goodbye to us all as we got on the train to leave there.
So what happened? So you graduated from boot camp.
I graduated from boot camp, and I was, of course, selected to be a hospital corpsman. And training for the hospital corps was also at Great Lakes Naval Training Center, but it wasn't boot camp. Now it was the real Navy. So I went home for 2 weeks leave, and I think it was 2 weeks, and then I returned to Great Lakes, where I spent the next several months learning, being introduced to being a hospital corpsman. And that included some fantastic training that really, the Navy really gave me my career, because I ended up working in healthcare after being discharged from the Navy. So we had a nurse who was, of course, a commissioned officer who was, I forget what her title was, but she was like the officer in charge of our company. And we trained at Great Lakes for 3 or 4 months. So most corpsmen went from there to naval hospitals to work for some period of time. And at that time, I can't say with certainty, but I feel pretty sure that most hospital corpsmen eventually went to field medical training and went on to Vietnam. My first duty station was Guantanamo, Cuba. That turned out to be a very fortunate experience for me, because in Cuba I was at a small dispensary at the Naval Air Station in Cuba, and I got to work with a fantastic medical officer. The military aspect of what we did, saluting and standing at attention and all that, was largely ignored or used for rare formal occasions when it was expected of all of us. But it was more of a comrade type of relationship there. And as a young guy who, with only a high school degree, I had the opportunity to do a little bit of work taking x-rays, doing clinical lab work, working in the dispensary. I even did minor suturing of lacerations, and as I said, our medical officer was willing to he was a grad of Duke University and a great guy, and was willing to teach us anything we were willing to learn, and that's experience that was invaluable to me.
So you were sent from Great Lakes to Cuba, and then from Cuba, where did you go? Cuba
was normally a one-year tour of duty for enlisted men who were not married. Cuba was an isolated base, as I believe it still is, surrounded by barbed wire and minefields. It was the mainland Cuba was a communist country, and the United States base there was very carefully protected from the mainland. And it was a one-year tour of duty, but one could not go off base. So that meant not much for a social life. They had a lot of activities on Guantanamo, I suspect, to keep young men's interests active, because there was essentially no dating or anything there. So there was, I didn't golf at the time, but there was a golf course on base. There were bowling alleys. There was also horseback riding, which I never participated in that either. There was a garage where guys could work fiddle around working on cars. I don't know how you get a car there, but there were some cars on the base. I began playing, I developed a lifelong interest in tennis when I was there, though in Cuba you had to play against the wind too, being right on the water. It was pretty windy place, as I recall. So there were a lot of activities there to keep guys. There was fantastic. There was a free open air movie, like drive-in movies, but you didn't have a car. There were lawn chairs out on a large concrete slab, and every night under the tropical skies, there were movies that could be attended for free by enlisted guys there, and that was a pretty neat thing. But you couldn't go off base. It was a one-year tour of duty, except evidently for hospital corpsmen, and at that time, that was 1967 by now, and they were using up corpsmen pretty rapidly at that point. And so I was only there 7 months when I got orders for field medical training in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. None of us were trained to do any kind of field medical work. And so that training was done at Camp Lejeune. So I think I was there about 7 or 8 months when I got orders to Camp Lejeune, where I did my field medical training, and most guys got assigned to units in Vietnam directly from, or it seemed like, I think it was most guys got assigned directly from Camp Lejeune. I had a brief stint being assigned to a unit in Camp Lejeune. So I was with the Marines there for a number of months beyond my basic field medical training.
So you were sent to Camp Lejeune and then on to?
Then the next winter, that was around January '68, there was no question that I was going to be going to Vietnam, and I wasn't particularly enjoying the duty at Camp Lejeune with the Marines, sort of in a permanent holding pattern for what I knew was going to be a trip to Vietnam. And I actually had put in a request for orders to Vietnam. But I think before my request actually formally went through the process, I had orders for Vietnam. So that winter, it was probably February of '68, I had orders for Vietnam. And so I had a leave, and then in March of '68, I reported for duty in San Francisco for transfer to Vietnam.
Do you remember when you first got to Vietnam, what it was like?
Yes. It's kind of funny, I think. Of course, Vietnam was very much in the news. This was a war, of course, and I think that nobody quite knows what to expect from that when they've been assigned probably to a war area. I mean, this was not like World War II where our troops went in on D-Day. We were, the United States military was, I believe there was over 500,000 Americans in Vietnam at the time, and we were already there. But I think I sort of I wondered whether we were going to get off the plane and have bullets ricocheting around and what to expect, and of course that wasn't the case. I seem to recall that Da Nang was perhaps the busiest airport in the world at that time. And it was a large commercial jet that we flew over on, and at first, at least, it seemed very, very normal there. You know, you fly on a commercial plane. There were stewardesses. They were called stewardesses then, and we got off the plane, and then we were assigned to various units. And there were several days that I spent in Da Nang at the time, where they began to acquaint us with where we were going, and I was to be assigned to a grunt outfit, 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines. I was issued, I guess it was at this point that I was issued my .45 caliber automatic pistol, and they took us out one day out to an area where there was, it seems like there was a sandbank, and we were given the opportunity to fire this .45 pistol. The purpose of having the weapon was was to protect ourselves and to protect our patients. That we were not to be using this gun to go out assaulting, and it's a good thing because I wouldn't have been able to hit anything but that sandbag. But we were to use the pistol in the defense of our personal defense and the defense of our patients.
So you weren't issued an
Well, that's the story here. Hospital corpsmen were not formally issued a rifle. However, every corpsman that I know of that served in grunt outfits very quickly was informally issued an M16 as soon as it was attached to his unit. And that certainly was the case for me. So technically I was a non-combatant. But I was better armed probably than the combatants there, because I still had to carry the 45 and I carried my M16. So for the whole time that I was in the field with the grunt outfit, I was armed.
And what unit were you assigned to?
I was with Fox Company, 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines.
And what was, obviously as a corpsman, what was your job or assignments?
It was field medical corpsman, and it was to provide for the immediate medical needs of the men in the platoon. In my platoon, there was one other hospital corpsman, Larry Wilson of Iowa, and he was. I arrived in Vietnam right after the famous Tet Offensive. I was very fortunate in my timing with my tour in Vietnam. My unit was at Hue City, maybe one of the most intense engagements of the Vietnam conflict. But I arrived a week or two after that was over. My fellow my fellow corpsman, Larry, had been through, and most of the guys that I met there had been through the Tet Offensive, serving in Hue City. In fact, that was one of the interesting things when I was I think I was in Da Nang before I had actually been attached to my unit. Obviously looking very green and very inexperienced, wearing boots that still had a shine on them and clothes that still looked crisp. An older Marine, a sergeant, came by and said, "How you doing, Doc? Geez, you're looking pretty cherry there." He says, "Whereabouts you going?" And I told him the unit that I was going to, and he said, "Oh, that's a great outfit." When I got there, many of the guys in the outfit were as new as I was because of the casualties that my unit did.
Do you have a couple of memorable experiences from Fox Company? Oh,
my most memorable experiences, because it was I was with them for 7 months. They tried to get hospital corpsmen at the time. I think there was a realization that hospital corpsmen did not enlist in the Marine Corps, they enlisted in the Navy. And maybe there was an attempt to sort of try to offset that a little bit. Most corpsmen, they tried to, after 6 months in the field, they tried to rotate them to a more secure unit in the rear. I think my transfer came at about 7 months when I was transferred back to Da Nang. It was at that time that I knew I was going home. But yes, I was with the grunt outfit for the first 7 months, and that was, of course, the most memorable part of that experience.
How did it feel being a Navy guy with a bunch of Marines?
You know, the Navy and the Marines have a reputation for their antagonism, but I think the corpsmen are well appreciated by the Marines, and I feel like I was. and still am when I see Marines. I saw one this morning in the parking lot. Somebody pulled in the parking lot just in front of me, and he had a Marine Corps sticker on the back of his car. And I ended up parking right next to where he was parked, and he's getting out and on his way to attend a class. And I said to him, "Semper Fi, Marine," and we shook hands and talked a bit. And he had served two tours in Iraq.
Were you awarded any medals or citations?
Just pretty much the routine service medals and ribbons that were given to men who served in my unit. I didn't get any special meritorious awards for valor or any of that stuff. But
now, while you were in Vietnam, how did you stay in touch with your family?
Letters only. That's all there were then. I still have a few of those letters that I had sent home. My sister saved them for me, and they've sat in a shoebox for these decades since the war, since I came home. But that was our means of communication. Once, when I was on R&R, I did phone home to speak with my brother. Now, I phoned home from Tokyo, and you might be aware that the time zone in Tokyo is different from the time zone in Connecticut. And my brother at the time was working the evening shift, and he wasn't home when I called, and something that he still teases me about today because he got the phone bill. It was a collect call, and I had a nice conversation with his wife, my sister-in-law, Barb. So that was my one phone home. Phones actually in country in Vietnam were just it just wasn't available.
What was the food like?
The food was sea rations. Sea rations and sea rations when I was with my field unit. That's not completely, almost exclusively it was sea rations. One of the things I brought here today was photographs of my other company corpsman, Larry, and myself. And Larry had showed me pictures of himself when he was a civilian, and he was kind of a little bit, I think you could say, a chubby guy. And when I was with him in Vietnam, and that photograph would attest to the fact that he looked like a walking skeleton, and it wasn't that there was no food for him to eat. We had food, and sea rations were a very high calorie diet. But the boredom of it, Larry just sort of lost interest in eating food. He smoked cigarettes, that probably attributed also, but he was a pretty thin, gaunt guy during the time that I knew him in Vietnam. And it was the lack of interest. We tried sea rations mixed every way possible in order to try to make the taste a little bit different or unusual. On a couple of occasions, we did have hot meals came out by helicopter to our unit. Not very good. I can remember scrambled eggs and maybe a breakfast type of thing. We didn't have plates. You know, I can remember a torn off cardboard part of the carton that sea rations came in, a torn off scrap of corrugated cardboard that served as a plate for getting hot food on a rare occasion or two that we had hot food. So, yeah. Also, there were packages from home. Were very welcome addition to the diet in Vietnam. Cans of food and different foods that could be shipped. So, and those were usually shared and much enjoyed.
Did you have plenty of supplies?
We did, but I don't think the Marine Corps was. I think that the Marine Corps seemed to need to prove that they could do more with less. I could be wrong. I could be totally wrong on that, but that's the way it seemed. I can remember guys when the pants they were wearing were pretty open air, and it took a while before resupplies. Most of us had the clothes that we had were the clothes that we were wearing, and that was pretty much it. So we didn't as a rule go hungry. If that's what you're referring to with supplies, with one exception, and that is the very first operation that I was on when I was attached to my unit was on a mountaintop. Was to get to a mountaintop actually, and. It was sort of above the cloud level, and we went a couple days with no resupply for food. And to this day, I have to say, it was the occasion on which I was more hungry than I had ever been in my life, or have been since then. I've been all too well fed since then, but that was an interesting operation. We left. It was the first operation I went on, and I had no idea what to expect. We were going out into the jungle. And we were supposed to climb this mountain, and we went in the middle of the night. It was dark. We were literally had our hand on the shoulder of the guy ahead of us as we set out, and it was supposed to be unannounced in advance. And we went, and because this was my first operation, I had absolutely no idea what to expect. And parts of that trip I do recall as being absolutely beautiful jungle. We climbed along a mountain stream where there were tropical flowers on the side, and it was in all honesty, under different circumstances, it could have been enjoyed as a really beautiful thing. Again, I was expecting that at any moment there would be bullets flying around. And as it turned out, there was not even a hint of hostile action on that operation. And I've always suspected the possibility. I mentioned that my unit incurred a lot of casualties during Tet, and maybe this was intentional, that they sent us on this operation as sort of a shakedown operation. They did not make that known to me or the other enlisted guys, but I wondered whether we could have been sent on this as sort of a shakedown operation where there would almost by intent be no hostile action. But the unit would maybe get toughened up a little bit and learn and begin to be exposed to what was going to be Vietnam. We went hungry, and I can imagine from an older perspective that who knows, that could have been intentional too, and it probably wasn't a bad thing for us. We got to know each other, and we didn't have to face any kind of hostility, so maybe it was a good thing. I do remember that on the top of that mountain, we hadn't been resupplied, as I said, and everybody was very hungry. And the day that we first got a helicopter was first able to drop supplies. It didn't land right on the top of the mountain where we were. It went down the side, and we had to go down to get it. Get the supplies, and by this time, strapping very fit young Marines, we were tripping over little sticks in the jungle. I think we were just a little bit weakened by lack of eating. But the first day that we got resupplied was my 21st birthday, and it was actually the first mail that I got when I was in Vietnam. So it was a good birthday in a way.
What did you carry with you as a field medical corpsman?
Well, as I mentioned, I did carry an M16 and my pistol and a supply of ammunition and a bandolier. I actually carried one fragmentation grenade, which I never used, and So that was unnecessary weight. If I had to do it again, I wouldn't carry the hand grenade. And I carried a field medical kit. It included a bottle of, 2 bottles, I guess, of plasma, which were in cardboard cans, sort of. I believe 250 milliliters per bottle of plasma, and a supply of bandages. I had taken from the States when I was, and I knew I was going to Vietnam. I took a tracheostomy tube, which I never needed, a hemostat, and so there was a supply of basic medical supplies. The medical kit was only about this size, so it was not possible to carry very sophisticated or advanced or a lot of stuff. And then my personal supplies, and in Vietnam, that was very, very little in the way of personal supplies. We carried a poncho liner, it was called. It was basically a camouflage polyester blanket. So each night when you would stop, you would sort of wrap up in that for sleeping. And in that tropical weather, there was no need for anything heavier than that for sleeping. There was, as I said, no change of clothes except socks. We all needed change of socks. Problems I had to deal with the Marines was I guess it was fungal infections. We called it jungle rot of the feet. You know, when the feet are constantly wet. I think in World War I they had a similar version they referred to as trench foot. But the feet would be could get pretty disgusting. So I always made it a habit whenever we stopped. There was a stream or whatever. You'd rinse out your dirty socks and you'd carry them to air dry, and you would change your socks whenever you could. We did have a supply of foot powder, and I have to say that I never really had any trouble with my feet. I did sort of have to keep after the Marines, my guys, to take care of themselves, because that was something that really could be a significant issue for you. You're on your feet all day long, and you may be at times never completely dry, you know, so that could be a problem. Other things that we carry, there was, as I said, really very little else to carry. Going out on flak jacket, of course, is and helmets we had. We wore those, and of course, and so that's pretty much what we carried.
Did you feel any pressure or stress while you were in Vietnam?
Of course. Probably, I'm guessing that anyone who's ever gone to war has wondered what might happen to him or her. And I think everyone who has gone through that experience has asked, well, how will I behave in that situation? So of course there was stress. There was long periods of boredom or long periods of time during which not much was happening. This was not a matter of we were in constant warfare with things happening all the time. So there were long periods of time when that didn't happen, but there was always the fear of that. When most of the time that I was with my infantry outfit, we were on patrols during the day, and we were sent out on squad size ambushes at night, and that meant 6 or 7 guys would go out as a squad to a predetermined location just before dark, where we would set up that position, and that's where we would remain until dawn. And the purpose was to engage any hostile military that came through the area. That would be that did not usually happen, I'm happy to say, but but on occasion it did, and so that's what we did.
Was there something special that you did for good luck?
No, I don't recall that. I don't recall doing anything special for good luck. This is a strange thing. It's a very strange thing. I don't believe in supernatural in any way. But I was in, there were occasions when it would have been crazy for me not to be scared to death, and I was. But I don't remember ever having the feeling that I wasn't going to make it. And as it turned out, I never got a scratch. I did cut my lip once. I hit the deck so fast when we took some small arms fire that my helmet came down over my face and cut my lip. But other than that, I came through the experience without injury.
How did you entertain yourself during those long periods of boredom?
Most of the time I was talking to the guys, you know. I mean, the talk was endless. There was a time when you not only knew all the names of the guys in the outfit. I mean, Larry Wilson, I knew the name of his wife and what kind of car he drove and what he was going to do and what kind of car he was going to have when he got back to the States, and so talk was the big thing for entertainment. I do remember one time when I was at I forget what the location was. We were within a small perimeter where there was a concentration of guys, so it was like a camp, and tents there, sandbag reinforced protection. And we had a few days of torrential rain, and we were not going out. Several days that we did not go out on any operation, and we sat in that tent and played cards, and for what seemed like hours on end. And one of the guys in the tent was a supply guy, a supply sergeant or something, and he had stuff that was not sea rations. And I remember in particular there was a large can of tuna fish. Now, tuna fish was not one of the sea ration meals, so this was not something that we were totally bored with, and it was something that most of us associated with something that we had at home. And I can remember opening meal after meal of sea rations. Sea rations did have cans of crackers. So I can remember there were cases of sea rations there. We went through cases and opened the various meals to take out the crackers, and we had the tuna fish with the crackers, and we played cards. So that was one memorable thing for entertainment and diversion.
Did you see any USO shows?
No, I didn't. I mentioned coming back to Vietnam when. So by Christmas of that year, I had rotated back to Da Nang, and Bob Hope was there in 1968. Ann Margaret was in the show, but this was not something that most of the guys could attend. I was now part of an engineering battalion in Da Nang, and I knew I was going home in a few months, and I was more than happy to miss the show, knowing someone else could go. So for our outfit in Da Nang, I think there was like one or two guys in the outfit got to go to the Bob Hope show, and I had a camera that I had bought then, and I gave him my camera, lent him my camera to take pictures, and I still have slides today of the Bob Hope show and Ann Margaret on stage, and they're not bad pictures actually.
That you didn't go to.
What?
That you have pictures of the USO show that you didn't
yes,
go to.
the pictures of the USO show that I missed, but that's okay.
Did you take any leave?
I took R&R. There was no leave really in Vietnam, but there was R&R, and I mentioned before what I think was very fortunate timing. that I had in Vietnam. I arrived in country shortly after the Tet Offensive, and in August of 1968, I had an opportunity to go on leave, and I'm on R&R, and it was basically that either no one else had the money or no one else. I don't remember what it was, because I was not in country. Let me see. March, April, May, June, July, August, 5 or 6 months. So I wasn't necessarily the next person in line by seniority in the field to get R&R, but no one else had wanted this particular R&R opportunity. It was an opportunity to go to Tokyo, and no one else wanted to do it. And I said, hey, I'd love to see Tokyo. And the whole time I was in the field, there was nothing to spend money on. So I was saving my money. Most of the guys did. I didn't smoke, so I didn't even need to buy cigarettes. I think I actually took in pay when I was in the field, $10 or $15 a month, and I always had money because there was nothing to spend it on. But so I went on R&R to Tokyo, and good time. So it was a good time not to be in Vietnam. And so I missed that. And I came back, and many of my friends were no longer with the outfit. But Tokyo was really, really nice. And because hospital corpsmen changed outfits, they changed assignments. Again, as I mentioned, I wasn't with the ground outfit the entire time. When I at a brief time when I was in a battalion aid station before I was transferred back to Da Nang, and another opportunity that came up to go to Thailand, and I took that opportunity. And then when I was transferred back to Da Nang, I had a third opportunity. Now I was in a different unit, and once again an opportunity came up to go to Hong Kong, and I got to go to Hong Kong. So I had 3 R&Rs during my, probably most guys had 1 or 2 R&R, 2 R&Rs when they were in Vietnam, and I had the good fortune of having 3 of them, and so that was a good thing.
Do you recall any particularly humorous or unusual events that happened?
None of them come to mind. I'm sure there were, but no humorous events particularly come to mind right away. Maybe one will occur to me.
We can always do that.
Yes.
What did you think of your officers and Marines?
I developed a strong affection for them. I think anyone that you go through those experiences with, you would develop a bond with them. I remember briefly when I was rotated to battalion aid station briefly. I remember leaving my unit, and it felt like kind of an emotional thing. I briefly had to serve because of casualties. I had to serve with another company, and it was brief. It was only for a couple weeks, going out on operation, and I was eventually able to be reassigned back to the unit that I was with. But I remember leaving those guys was pretty difficult for me, and I think the guys felt the same way, you know. So I had pretty strong bonds with the guys in the outfit. As far as officers go, when I was in the field, the first operation that I was on that I mentioned, that one on the mountaintop, we had a lieutenant for our platoon on that operation, and maybe for a short time after that, but for much of the time that I was in the field, our unit was very undermanned, and we didn't even have a commissioned officer for our platoon. We went some period of time where the highest rank in the platoon was sergeant, and maybe even for a while a corporal. So I wasn't with commissioned officers in the field very long after that first operation.
So once you left your fax company, what happened?
Well, when I was briefly at the battalion aid station, that was a much more secure position. And that was fairly brief, and I don't have much in the way of memories about that. I did take R&R from there, but before I did get my reassignment to Da Nang, and that was memorable because I knew I had made it, and I was going to be going back to the States. I think. I do have a couple of distinct memories of that. I think I gained 5 pounds in about the first 48 hours I was in Da Nang. They had ice cream, and we ate in a mess hall, and I slept on a bunk. For the 7 months that I was in the field, I slept on the ground almost every single night for that entire time period. I do remember sleeping in a Catholic school for the Vietnamese children. There were desks that were long tables, and one of the places we set up at night when we moved in as a squad, we moved into that, and I slept on one of those desks that the students had there. I slept in a pagoda on the floor, but there was no sleeping accommodations. And when I went to Da Nang, there were beds, there was air conditioning. When I got there, a group of the hospital corpsmen in this dispensary in Da Nang were watching Armed Forces television and sitting around in t-shirts, and I was freezing and I had to go outside because by that time I was pretty used to the heat, and I was acclimated to the heat, and I just was freezing in that room, and so that was a very different experience for me. That was one humorous experience, perhaps, when I was not in the field, but when I was in Da Nang. We had these basically there were plywood buildings is what we lived in, and that's what the dispensary was. And I was in the dispensary one day, and all of a sudden there were explosions and rattling of the walls, and we thought we were taking incoming rocket attack, and I ran outside the building with the other guys, and somebody was outside saying, "Relax, take it easy. That's the New Jersey offshore firing." The New Jersey battleship. They had to be 2 miles away, and we thought that the walls were going to come down from the concussion of those the big guns on the New Jersey.
Did you have any interaction with the Vietnamese people?
Yes, I did, and that came mostly when I was after being assigned to Da Nang. We did something called MedCaps, Medical Civilian Action Program, and there was a physician, our medical officer, and I would go out into an adjacent village and provide some very basic medical care for people, mostly for children in the community. And this was not high-level, sophisticated care. This was mostly perhaps injections of antibiotic for ear infections, doing examinations of the ears. It seems like there were a lot of ear infections. And providing some very basic care for local wounds, putting dressings on, you know, not very sophisticated stuff. But that was probably our most significant interaction with civilians there.
Did you have an interpreter, or who's with you?
That's a good question. I don't remember having an interpreter per se. I think we mostly, the civilians that were in close proximity to our military seemed to develop some basic understanding of the language. I don't remember anybody being an interpreter per se.
Do you recall when your service ended?
Well, I served in Vietnam for just slightly under a year. I got a little bit of an early out, so I think I was there for 11 months and 10 days instead of the 12 months that I was obligated to do. And I was flown back into the United States. One of my favorite and most memorable songs is Simon and Garfunkel singing Homeward Bound. They were playing that on the radio when I flew into New York. And I have to say that the experience of coming home, the grateful joy of coming home was an incomparable experience in life, period. And when I came back to the States, I still had another year of service remaining to me, and I was assigned to St. Albans Naval Hospital in Queens, New York. And it was at that assignment, actually, that I met the woman who was to become my wife. Actually, I met her sister. I worked evenings I worked at the Naval Hospital in Queens, as I said. I was the senior petty officer in the emergency room there. And in the evening, probably 3 days a week, perhaps, I worked 3 or 4 days a week, maybe. I worked at a civilian hospital as what was basically an orderly or medical assistant in the civilian hospital. And there were nurses and student nurses that worked in that civilian hospital. And I met a woman who is my sister-in-law now. Once
you got to the Naval Hospital, you were there for a year.
And then I was discharged.
And then you were discharged.
Yeah, I worked at St. Albans Naval Hospital for approximately a year after coming back from Vietnam, and then I was discharged from St. Albans from active duty.
Did you go to work, or did you go to school after you were discharged?
Well, I went to work in order to go to school. It's funny. The state of Connecticut at the time, they did a very nice thing. They were giving a bonus to Vietnam. I don't know whether it was just Vietnam veterans or Vietnam era veterans, but they gave us a check for $300 from the state. And I remember I spent the $300 to buy a couple of suits. I thought all I wanted to do was get out of that damn white uniform, at least in summer uniform was white. Get out of that uniform and work. I wanted to work in an office, and I bought 2 suits with my money from my bonus money, and I worked in an office, which was an absolutely horrible experience. And I worked in that office for about a month, and I decided that was not for me. And in that time, I had heard, in fact, when I was at St. Albans, I had heard from a couple guys that planned to go into a new medical specialty. They were going to become inhalation therapists. And that sort of stuck in my mind, though I didn't have any intentions at that time. But when I left the job in the office, I had begun to explore a college degree. Quinnipiac College had a program in medical technology, and they seemed interested in getting me into that program. I interviewed with probably the dean of the program, and he seemed interested in getting me into that program. But at the time, although we had the GI Bill, I was self-supported. I was an adult, and I was living on my own. And that was a 4-year program. And the inhalation therapy program that they had at Quinnipiac was a 2-year degree. And completing 2 years of education, I would be employable and I would have a paycheck. And I became interested in that, largely for that practical reason. But that was provided an excellent career for me that I have appreciated since then. I did go to work. I had to work the entire time while I was going to school. First, I went back. I had worked at Pratt Whitney Aircraft prior to going into the service, and I returned to Pratt Whitney Aircraft for probably 6 months. But when I wanted to begin school, I couldn't get the shift change that I wanted. There wasn't the flexibility in the schedule that would allow me to take the classes that I needed to take. So I left Pratt & Whitney, and I had a succession of very low-level jobs while I was getting my degree. I worked for Seamless Rubber in New Haven, which I believe no longer exists. Actually, one of the Seamless Rubber buildings that I worked in is now part of Yale New Haven Hospital, ironically. And I've taught lectures in that same building that I had worked in. I sort of had the pride, something I'm proud of now. When I worked at Seamless Rubber, I had the distinction of having the lowest job in the entire company. And that was a good thing. Again, I did trucking of supplies. I don't think that would be legal. What they had then, I don't think would be legal today. There was a lot of dust in the air and machinery and stuff. And I worked for a couple months, I guess, at that lowest level job, and then I was reassigned to a shipping department, which was quite a bit cleaner and neater and easier job to do. And I had a number of part-time jobs. I worked at Griffin Hospital as an orderly for about a year when I was actually attending classes. So between work and school, I was going 7 days a week during that time. But I got my associate's degree from Quinnipiac College in respiratory. It was then called inhalation therapy, and soon became officially changed the name of that practice to respiratory therapy. And after working in that for 3 years, I was promoted to a teaching position. I continued my education. I got my bachelor's degree and took courses towards a master's. I never really got my master's degree. I had a very fortunate experience, and that was beginning to teach. In those days, very few people that had the technical background in respiratory care also had any qualifications to teach. And we were I was given the opportunity to teach, even though today I would not have, that would not be an adequate qualification for teaching. I had the good fortune of beginning that, and that was provided a wonderful career for me. I taught for 35 years at Yale New Haven Hospital, most of it also teaching at Quinnipiac University, and that was a wonderful experience. And I have to say that it was really due to my experience in the Navy that directed me. I have to say that right out of high school, I was undirected. I did not have a career goal. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And the Navy really provided that for me. And that was an invaluable experience. Even Vietnam, I think, was an invaluable experience to me, having come through it without mishap. The opportunity to see how people in another part of the world live, appreciate, was good.
Did you make any close friendships while you were in the service?
Of course, I did, but it may be surprising. Other than the buddy that I enlisted with, none of those relationships did I keep up. I probably the first 10 years after Vietnam, I pretty actively avoided even thinking about that experience. Even Larry, I feel very bad now that Larry Wilson, I never reconnected with him after Vietnam. I have actually tried to locate him in more recent years and haven't succeeded yet. I think I'm going to continue. Iowa has a number of Larry Wilsons, and none of them yet has been my Larry Wilson. But I would really like to reconnect with him and see how he has done.
Did you join any veterans organizations?
Not for a long time. A couple of years ago, I did join the VFW. I have to say that I really had no interest in doing that, and I say this without malice, and I could be criticized for this. For a while, I felt like some of the veterans groups were another American interest group. That's not why I served in the military, and I wasn't interested in pursuing that. And that's probably not a fair take on that, but that's sort of the way I saw it. And when I did join the VFW, it was a desire to support the organization and the people that were active in it, but I have to say that I have not been an active member of the VFW. When I came back, I was also not a very active member, but I was on some level. I was a member. I think I put my name on paper someplace along the way of Vietnam Veterans Against the War. I was not very active in that pursuit either. I wasn't marching in the street or anything, but I had pretty strong convictions by 1969 that the war wasn't in the interests of our country. I was in Vietnam. I was in the field, actually, when Martin Luther King was killed and when Bobby was killed. So the war sort of politicized me in a way. I think the people in command when I was in Vietnam were actually, when Bobby Kennedy was killed, I think here we had a bunch of young guys, armed to the teeth, and people of all racial backgrounds. And when Martin Luther King was killed, I think there was concern that there might be problems among the men. And I was in the field at the time, and at least in field units, we were brothers. And I never had a sense that there was any concern that we were all anxious to get through this experience alive together. But that was a distinct part of my recollection of that time in Vietnam, that what was going on back here. They called our unit together and they said to us, whatever is going on back there, we have to be focused on what we're doing here. And I don't think they needed to say that to us. I think we understood that.
Did your military experience influence your thinking about war or about the military in general?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say it has. My thinking also, I suspect, like most of the country, I think our feelings have evolved through the years. At that time in 68, 69, 70, it was, and I guess it had to be extremely politicized, and as I said, I was very much against the war, and I felt very, very strongly about that. But thinking does evolve through the years, and I have experienced changes in feelings all through the years. I have to admit to having very strong feelings about the decision to go to war in Iraq, and I remember feeling that a resurgence of feelings that I thought I had put long behind me when the decision was made to go to Iraq, and I felt like our country was making a mistake that it shouldn't have made, and I had the strong feeling that the leadership of our country hadn't learned from that experience, maybe because they didn't experience Vietnam, and they took no lesson from whatever lesson was to be gained by Vietnam. I thought that the most reluctant person in the administration to go to war in Iraq was Colin Powell, and I thought the reason he was reluctant is he did have the experience of Vietnam.
How has your service and your experiences affected your life?
I think it's given me, it has been a source of pride, personal pride to me. I think that's fair to say.
Is there anything else you would like to add? Or did we cover everything?
We covered quite a bit of territory here.
We did.
I think I don't think so. I think that's, unless there's anything else you have questions.
Up to you.
Okay.
Anything else?
No. Thank you very much.
Thank you.